Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the board members. It's an important meeting today with the passing of the budget, and I want to welcome you to the second and final of two public hearings, as you mentioned, Ms. Flowers. The board members, I'd like to personally thank you for your interest and assistance in formulating the 2018-19 budget for the fiscal year. As you know, this budget is tied directly to our strategic plan. As I lose my voice, hopefully the budget doesn't get lost, but the budget was initially presented in great detail at the board workshop on June 26th. So you remember those thick notebooks that Mr. Smith provided. The tentative millage rates and preliminary budget were then formally approved at the July 31st public hearing. And the budget before you tonight is the final proposed budget and the millage rates for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. Once again, thank you to the board and for your willingness to take the time to study the budget and to gain a greater understanding aspects of all parts of the budget. At this time, Mr. Smith and your staff and his staff will make some introductory comments and present the proposed millage and the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grego. This is the second and final hearing on the district millage and budget. The format and order are prescribed by Florida statutes, and they must follow a specific order. The material available at the first public hearing in July provided comparative information on the projected fiscal year-end closeout. The 17-18 fiscal year-end books have been closed, and the actual results are reflected in the hearing document you have in your possession tonight. As you'll hear in a few minutes, this budget recommends a lower millage rate than last year. At this time, Ms. Karen Coffey, Executive Director of Budget and Resource Allocation, will present the proposed millage, followed by Ms. Luann Jordan, Manager Budget, FTE and Cost Reporting, who will present the proposed budget. Ms. Coffey.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and good evening, Dr. Grego, Madam Chair, board members, and staff. TRIM, or Truth in Millage, requires school districts to advertise their proposed budget and millage rates annually. The district's 2018-2019 millage is comprised of the general operating millage, which includes the required local effort, discretionary, and local referendum. The Florida Department of Education certifies the state-required local effort, or RLE, millage rate that must be levied by the school board to generate its local share of funding for the district. The local referendum of 0.5 mil was initially approved by the voters in 2005, 2006, and was approved for the fourth time in 2016, 2017 for a 4-year period. The proposed millage also includes the capital outlay 1.5 mil. What is a mill? A mill refers to the rate of property tax commonly paid on the assessed value of homes and business properties. A mill equates to $1 of taxes for every $1,000 of taxable property value. The rolled back rate is the millage rate that would generate the same amount of revenue as last year if applied to the current tax roll after adjusting for new construction. The 2018-2019 proposed millage of 6.727 is higher than the rolled back rate by 2.23%. Our gross property tax value of approximately $86.6 billion is an increase from last year's value by 7.6%, or $6.1 billion. Comparing the current and prior year millage rates, you can see the total levied millage rate in 2017-2018 was 7.009, and for 2018-19, our proposed total levied millage is 6.727. This is an overall decrease of about 4%. You will note the required local effort has decreased by 6.62%. Our property tax revenue comparison shows an increase in revenue of $17.8 million over last year's proceeds. This is the result of an increase in our property tax roll. Our required local effort is increasing by about $1.6 million. The proposed millage rate will generate about $4.4 million more, and the referendum will yield an additional $2.9 million. The capital outlay millage will generate $8.8 million also as a result of the property value increase. Under the proposed rate, the owner of a $200,000 home, after the deduction of the $25,000 homestead exemption, would pay $1,177. Over the course of 1 year, this averages out to $3.20 a day. The taxable value of property in Pinellas County has experienced an increase on average of 7.6%, and the Florida legislature has set a required local effort to 3.979, which is a decrease from the prior year's required local effort of 4.261. As a result, some homeowners may experience an increase in their paid school taxes as demonstrated here. It is important to note this is the result of an increase in property value and not an increase in our levied millage rate. The required local effort is an appropriated amount set by the Florida Department of Education. The school board must levy this amount in order to receive state funding. It is used for day-to-day operation, such as school staffing and utilities. The discretionary millage is used for general operations of the district and to meet additional costs due to inflation. The local referendum dollars are used to recruit and retain quality teachers, preserve reading, art, and music programs, and provide up-to-date textbooks and technology. The capital outlay millage is the primary funding source for maintenance, renovation, new construction, and equipment as advertised on July 28th. At this time, I will turn it back over to the board chair to allow for public input and for the motions necessary to adopt the millage rate. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your presentation. Ms. Ann, do we have any person signed up to speak?
Board members and Dr. Grego, we do not have any speakers signed up.
Okay. We do have the approval of discretionary local effort millage. School Board Member Carol Cook.
I move that the board,
It's on.
I move that the board approve the levying of the discretionary millage discretionary local effort millage of 0.748 mils as part of the total millage to be certified to the property appraiser and the Florida Department of Revenue.
Do we have a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have the adoption of the total millage rates. School Board Member Peggy O'Shea.
I move that the board adopt a millage rate of 6.727 mils to be set and certified to the property appraiser and to the Florida Department of Revenue. The millage rates are as follows. For required local effort, 3.979 mils. For discretionary local effort, 0.748 mils. For local referendum, 0.5 mils. For capital outlay, 1.5 mils. For a total millage of 6.727 mils. This rate is 2.23% higher than the rollback rate.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? Moving on to the presentation of the budget. Hi.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Grego, and staff. I'll continue tonight's presentation with an overview of the district's proposed budget for 2018-19. The budget calendar is ongoing throughout the year. During the course of the year, budget updates are provided at board workshops, and monitoring is performed through budget analyses and forecasts. In the spring, we typically have a better idea of what the legislative budget is providing for us, whether we can expect an increase or decrease of state funds. Budget steering committee meetings are held during this time frame primarily for capital outlay requests. In July and September, we hold 2 public hearings regarding the budget and millage. As mentioned earlier, the first hearing was held on July 31st. Tonight is the second of those hearings. Certain parameters guide the building of the budget. We strive to and have been able to maintain a 63-37 ratio. This means at least 63% of all expenses are for district direct instruction or in the classroom, and 37% are related to other areas such as instructional support, plan operations, and administration. Over the past several years, we've exceeded that benchmark with a ratio of approximately 65-35. In short, at least 2/3 of all funding goes toward expenditures in the classroom. We're required by statute to maintain a minimum 3% contingency. District policy states we're to maintain a minimum 5% contingency. This budget projects our contingency to be in excess of 5% at the end of the 2018-19 fiscal year. We also budget so as to support our core curriculum and strategic directions. The majority of our budget is in our general fund. This year it's proposed to be approximately $949 million. The second largest funding source is capital outlay at just under $315 million. The self-insured health fund is anticipated to be approximately $147 million and represents the district's third largest fund. The total proposed budget for all funds this year is approximately $1.5 billion. Looking at the budget summary for all revenue sources, you see that approximately 63% of the total budget comes from the general fund. Capital outlay accounts for almost 21%. The combined total of these two funds comprises approximately 84% of our entire budget. The new year brings several legislative changes. The base student allocation, or BSA, increased to $4,204.42. This is an increase of just 47 cents, or 0.01% over last year's BSA. Statewide, funding increased $481.7 million, or $2.7 million to Pinellas. Statewide funding for the Safe Schools allocation increased $97.5 million to be utilized for additional school resource officers. A new mental health assistance allocation will provide $69.2 million in funding statewide. Lastly, changes in the Florida retirement system contribution rate are expected to increase district expenditures. Total operating fund resources are anticipated to be approximately $949 million. Of that, about $457 million comes from local sources, which includes the half-mil referendum. Nearly $383 million comes from state sources. The Florida Education Finance Program, or FEFP, is the general fund's primary funding source. The FEFP funding formula utilizes a combination of state and local resources to fund education. Looking at the operating revenue budget graphically, you'll note that the local sources represent about 48% of the total operating budget, and state sources account for about 40%. The remaining 12% comes from transfers and fund balance. The operating budget is used to fund the day-to-day operating expenditures of the district. It pays for salaries and benefits, supplies and materials, textbooks, student transportation, utilities, maintenance, and repairs. Viewing the distribution of our operating budget by object, there's little change from past years. About 62% of our budget is spent on salaries and 20% on benefits. In total, 82% of our operating budget goes towards staffing. Capital outlay funds include revenue from both state and local sources. This fund reflects revenue and expenditures for construction and renovation of school buildings and grounds. The majority of these funds are generated by the local capital improvement millage, which is set by law and limited to 1.5 mils. Our proposed capital outlay budget is approximately $315 million. This budget reflects $129 million in new revenue and $276 million in proposed appropriations. The special revenue budget is comprised of two major categories of federal funds: contracted programs and food service. The total contracted programs budget is approximately $40 million. This budget starts the year off low and builds as the year goes on, as we don't recognize or book the revenue until it is received. Food service is a self-sustaining fund, as it receives no dollars from the operating fund. Federal reimbursements and local collections are the primary revenue source. The proposed food service budget is approximately $53 million. The debt service fund is used to account for the payment of general long-term debt principal and interest. The district categorizes the debt service fund into two groups. First, State Board of Education bonds, or SBE bonds, account for principal and interest payments for bonds issued by the state of Florida on the district's behalf in February of 2000. The current principal balance is $1.2 million, and this debt will be paid off by 2021. And second regards the district's certificate of participation bonds, also known as COPS, issued in 2017. COPS bonds account for obligations pertaining to debt issued under a master lease agreement with the Pinellas County Leasing Corporation. The current principal balance that's related to these bonds is $57.9 million. This debt will be paid off by 2041. The proposed self-insured workers' compensation and liability budget of $5.3 million accounts for the premium revenue and expenditures associated with the district's self-insured workers' compensation and liability insurance programs. The district's self-insured health fund accounts for the district's premium revenue and claim expenditures with a budget of approximately $147 million. The proposed budget and all supporting documents are on file in the Office of Budget and Resource Allocation. This information can also be found online. At this point, I'll turn the meeting back to the board chair to allow for public comment and the motions necessary to adopt the proposed budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ann, do we have any public comment speakers?
Board members and Dr. Grego, we do not have any speakers for that item.
Thank you. Approval of the final budget for 2018-2019. School Board Member Terry Krasner.
Yes, I move that the board adopt the 2018-19 budget as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Adoption of the resolution determining revenues and millages. School Board Member Eileen.
I move that the board adopt the required resolution as presented without formal reading.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Please note that all motions carried unanimously. Do we have any additional board actions that are required? Any other considerations and any concluding comments? School Board Member Lentino?
Yeah, on the information that we were looking at on the screens, there was one line that said racetrack.
Mhm.
Can
So
someone?
we receive funding from pari-mutuel wagering,
Oh.
specifically for capital outlay purposes. It's a small dollar amount that we receive every year. It's not a great deal.
Okay, and that's like a legislative
It's by
rule?
statute. By statute, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Good to know.
Good question. Are there any other questions by any other board members? Having no further business to come before our budget process, I will adjourn the budget piece.